Good morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah is off this morning. We begin in the Middle East, where Israel is intensifying its assault on Lebanon from the air and the ground. Overnight, Israel carried out a new wave of airstrikes on the Lebanese capital, Beirut, killing at least 9 people. That's according to Lebanese health officials, who say more than 1,300 people have been killed and over 1 million displaced since Israel stepped up its attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon. In the first few ground clashes of Israel's invasion, the IDF said 8 of its troops were killed in close combat with Hezbollah fighters. All that comes as the region holds its breath for Israel's response to Iran's recent ballistic missile attack. The UN has called for restraint, but UN ambassadors for both countries clashed at yesterday's Security Council meeting.
Israel will defend itself. We will act. And let me assure you, the consequences Iran will face for their actions will be far greater than they could ever have imagined. Iran must pay a heavy price for this attack.
The only way to prevent further escalation is clear. Israel must immediately cease its war on Gaza, and its attacks on Lebanon must stop. Iran's missile strikes were a necessary and proportionate response to Israeli continued terrorist aggressive acts over the past 2 months.
In a few moments, we'll speak with the former National Security Council Director for Syria and Lebanon and host of Oh My World on YouTube, Hagar Shamali. But before that, let's go to NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley, who joins us from Beirut. Matt, good morning. So just what is the situation like on the ground where you are following this latest wave of Israeli airstrikes and now this direct engagement between IDF troops and Hezbollah fighters?
Yeah, Joe, I mean, a lot happening all at once. You know, it was late last night. We were sat right here where normally we've been having a front row seat to the horrifying fireworks happening in Dahia right over here, that Muslim majority area south of Beirut that has been the focal point of so many of these Israeli airstrikes for the last 2 weeks, ever since this expanded offensive by the Israelis against Hezbollah began. But it's just like you said. For the second time this week, we've seen the Israelis striking now into central Beirut. And this time it was very, very close to the main business district of Beirut. A lot of embassies, really Martyrs Square, which is considered kind of the heart of the city. And this time it was a medical facility that was connected to Hezbollah that was apparently the target of this attack. And as you said, 9 people are reported dead. That number could easily go up. Now, what this means is that Israel is expanding the footprint geographically of where it's striking here in Lebanon's capital, but also kind of strategically, ideologically, and politically. This was not ostensibly a military target. And I actually spoke yesterday with a Hezbollah member of parliament, because remember, this isn't just a militant group. They have seats in parliament, they have ministries, they have, lots of different administrative procedures and operations. So they're not just a militant group. This member of parliament said that he wasn't afraid of being targeted because he's a political figure rather than a militant figure. That doesn't look like that's going to protect him anymore, as we're seeing Israel putting more and more Hezbollah people and targets on its menu.
So, Matt, we know Israel has promised to hit back against Iran for that ballistic missile attack, but President Biden says he's against the targeting of Iranian nuclear sites. Does the U.S. have enough influence with Netanyahu right now to get him to avoid those targets?
Well, we hope that they do, because the fact of the matter is that it doesn't look as though the Israelis are going to be stopping anytime soon. Like I said, they're already expanding their list of targets here in Lebanon. Now they're attacking airstrikes, using airstrikes to attack targets in Syria, in Yemen. And this is not new per se, but it looks as though the tempo and the tone of this has really increased over the last 2 to 3 weeks. We understand from various reporting, including NBC News' own reporting, that there is frustration that among American diplomats that they no longer have the traction in Jerusalem that they did before, or with the Ministry of Defense, or with Benjamin Netanyahu himself. But some of the reports, particularly from Axios, came out a couple of days ago saying that the Israelis this time are definitely going to be consulting with the U.S. government before they take this retaliatory step. Now, whether or not they're going to follow through or listen to Joe Biden's admonishment that he would like to not see nuclear targets getting hit because he worries about escalation, that is yet to be seen. Israel very clearly is in vengeance mode right now, and they're, as like I said, expanding their targets by air, launching a military ground incursion into Lebanon. It's unclear what they're going to do next, but it's also unclear whether or not they're going to be listening to Washington and other foreign capitals.
Matt Bradley. Matt, thank you so much. Let's keep the conversation going with Hagar Shamali. Hagar, good to have you with us. So we know you have strong roots and ties to Lebanon. What's your reaction to Israel's ground invasion and these airstrikes we're seeing in Beirut? What is it you're hearing?
Yeah, Joe, thank you for mentioning that. Actually, I'm of Lebanese descent. I've spent a considerable amount of time in Lebanon. I handled Hezbollah. Hezbollah was in my portfolio when I handled counterterrorism at the U.S. government, and I was director for Syria and Lebanon, and as you mentioned. And there's a lot here that doesn't look as clear as it is to people on the ground. This is not Gaza 2.0, and Hezbollah is a terrorist and organized criminal group. And any effort they do to have political seats, to provide social services, that is all a cover. All of that is so that they can expand Iran's influence and an extreme Shia ideology in Lebanon, and to point a loaded gun at Israel's head. That is literally their only raison d'etre. And so the targets that we've seen, actually, and I want to be very clear, Dahia is not the center of Beirut. It is near the center of Beirut, but it is a Hezbollah stronghold in a southern suburb between the center of Beirut and Beirut's capital. And most Lebanese, every Lebanese I speak to, and to be fair, the Lebanese I'm speaking to are Christian and Sunni, and Lebanon is very segregated by its religions. They are not worried about things headed their way. They are panicked, of course, because it makes everything at a standstill. It's nerve-wracking, of course. They don't want war in their area. But make no mistake, they are gleeful at the deaths of Hezbollah leaders. I can't stress that enough. These are people who have, this is a terrorist group and its leaders who have destroyed Lebanon politically, economically, physically, who've invited war into the country. And many Lebanese people, though some of them are public, some of them aren't, want to see this group undermined. And that's how they're viewing this war. Now, on the Israeli side, some people may want to call it vengeance, but you have to be very clear. Over the last few months, it's very clear their intentions with this war have changed, so that they are fundamentally changing the threat that they're facing from all of Iran's proxies, which is why they're going more heavily into Lebanon, the Houthis, going into the West Bank, going after Hamas, and so on. Israel is saying that they don't want to go back to the status quo pre-October 7. And all of that is because of Iran.
So grateful to have your expertise and help us put everything into context right now, Hagar. I mean, we've watched as the U.S. government has been trying to get a ceasefire deal in place with no luck. Now we have the president saying he would not support a retaliatory strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. In your mind, does the U.S. have enough to sway Israel right now to stop what could be an even bigger escalation in this conflict? Have we reached a point where the U.S. really only has this military aid as leverage?
Well, so I worked very closely with the Israeli government in my time, and it's not that different, to be honest with you. The Israeli government briefs the United States very closely. Typically, we coordinate very closely on things. We share intelligence and so on. It's a very, very tight relationship and very consistent. I mean, I'm talking about on a daily basis here. But the Israeli government, while they care about what the U.S. says and its guidance and its views, and they certainly care to continue having the U.S. behind its back, that doesn't necessarily mean that if they disagree that Israel will just completely bend to what the U.S. demands. And you've seen that play out, surely, over the last 11 months. The Biden administration very much does not want this war to escalate further, and they certainly don't want a direct confrontation with Iran to worsen, because that's what would really rope in U.S. involvement more heavily. And so they're going to heed the U.S. calls, and I do think that, because I've seen it before, I do think that it can limit the response from Israel. But at the end of the day, Israel will do that. The Netanyahu administration in particular will do what it wants.
All right. Hagar, thank you so much. Appreciate you joining us this morning. Former President Trump is lashing out at special counsel Jack Smith over a sweeping new 165-page court filing. It lays out more detailed evidence against Mr. Trump in the federal election interference case. This filing is in response to the Supreme Court ruling earlier this year that said Mr. Trump had some immunity for actions he took as president, and that prosecutors could not use his official acts in their case. For more, let's bring in NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard, joining us with the latest. All right, so as I said, 165-page filing here, lots of new details. What are the main takeaways we're seeing out of this?
The big part of this presentation by the special counsel's office is trying to make the case to Judge Chutkan, who is overseeing this federal election interference case, that Donald Trump was working as a private citizen, not president of the United States. And throughout this 160-page document, this filing, they lay out, for instance, that his conversations with Mike Pence were not with him as a vice president, but instead with him as a friend. And Mike Pence, who cooperated with the special counsel's investigation, and throughout this document, there is documented over those 2 months between November and January 6th, in which he was urging Donald Trump to all but concede defeat by saying, as a friend, let's look at this as an intermission, not a loss, suggesting potentially they could run again in 2024. And ultimately, it was Donald Trump right before the January 6th certification in which he told his vice president that he would have to go publicly and say that Mike Pence was doing a disservice to the country if he didn't reject the electors. And so in this document, it is some damning evidence that is being presented by the special counsel that the public is seeing for the first time.
Let's talk about the timing of this, because we know that the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, put out this memo saying let's not do anything that's going to affect the election at all. Mr. Trump's calling this a witch hunt, saying this goes against that directive. Some are saying, hey, is this the first October surprise? What do we know about the timing of this, why it's being released now?
This trial was potentially going to be set with the jury to decide whether Donald Trump was guilty or not until the Supreme Court made that unity decision. So that really slowed down the entirety of this. And where Judge Chutkan has been very assertive in this is saying that she was going to proceed as if there was no election. And, you know, Donald Trump is a criminal defendant, and this trial is going to proceed. Now, of course, this is the last big public filing that we should expect. But Donald Trump and his campaign, they did not want this filing to be released until after the election. There are some comments in there, including at one point, Donald Trump, according to an aide to his, is saying, quote, it doesn't matter if you won or lost the election. You still have to fight like hell. There was another iteration from a witness who described on January 6th his VP, Mike Pence, going to a remote secure location after the attackers attacked the Capitol. Donald Trump's words allegedly were, quote, so what? This is sort of that evidence that the Harris campaign has consistently pointed to and saying that Donald Trump cannot be trusted to take back the White House here. And yet, this is where, if Donald Trump does win and takes the White House again in 2025, we could very well potentially see him order his Department of Justice to drop this case in its entirety in the indictment. So really, this is going to come down to November of whether he wins or loses and whether this case is even ever heard.
Yeah, the case will definitely go away if he's elected. We know that. So we know we're not going to have a trial before November. Real quickly here, what can we expect next in this?
This is where, over the next month, we should not expect anything public to really come out. This is going to be both sides that are going to be putting forward their motions. Ultimately, there will be a hearing by Judge Chutkan to determine whether the extent to which Donald Trump is immune from some of the charges that he faced from the superseding indictment. And already there were some of the initial charges that the Department of Justice and the special counsel brought against Donald Trump that had already been dropped because of the Supreme Court's decision. But Judge Chutkan is going to determine whether this case can go on in its entirety at this point in time, or whether some of the charges will not be able to stand. So it's going to be really over the next month. The public should not expect to hear much, but come November, December, after the election, we should see this really ramp up before, of course, Inauguration Day, which is really going to be the question of whether this case proceeds at all.
All right, Von Hilliard, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Mr. Trump's going to be back on the campaign trail today. He's heading to the battleground state of Michigan, while Vice President Harris will be next door, visiting Wisconsin for a fifth time. It is the battle for the prized Midwest. NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba joins us now with more on the campaign. Monica, good morning. So let's start with Mr. Trump. What's his pitch to voters in Michigan, where the polls are just neck and neck right now?
Yeah, it's an absolutely key battleground state for both of these candidates, and that's why you saw Senator J.D. Vance, fresh off the vice presidential debate, go to Michigan yesterday, and that's why you're also going to see Vice President Harris head to Flint, Michigan tomorrow. But as for today, he is going to be having a campaign rally there, and this is really a place where we expect these candidates to be crisscrossing and returning to over and over again. But a really interesting event that the vice president is going to be having today in Wisconsin, as you mentioned. She's going essentially to the birthplace, what is considered the birthplace of the Republican Party, and she's going to be stumping along with former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, who of course endorsed her a couple of weeks ago along with her father, former Vice President Dick Cheney, as part of their push of some of the Republicans who have backed the Harris-Walz ticket. Joe.
So, Monica, yesterday we saw President Biden and Vice President Harris touring areas devastated by Helene. We're going to talk more about Helene in a moment. But what can you tell us about that trip, and just also what's on the VP's agenda today when she does visit Wisconsin?
Yeah, and this is something that, of course, comes at a time where the president and the vice president in their official capacities are responsible for being the face of the federal response to the devastation out of Hurricane Helene. So even though it's a very intense election year and season, the vice president, who, of course, is the Democratic nominee now, put aside some of her campaign events this week in order to be focused on this. And so she traveled to Georgia yesterday. President Biden was in North Carolina. They both were able to get some briefings from FEMA. President Biden was able to do an aerial tour as well. And they continue to pledge that all of the personnel and resources that the people in these states need so desperately will be available to them, as there are still mounting questions about how some of the response and the preparations went. But this is something really that you are seeing develop as a potential issue for the administration, clearly at a time where they're so close to the election that it's dominating a lot of the conversation. But the vice president said that she's committed to that. And again, today she's saying, I'm going to Wisconsin. I'm going to have this campaign event with Liz Cheney, but that the ongoing briefings about what's happening with Hurricane Helene and the response will continue. But that's why she set aside yesterday to be sure to do that. And then we're told that she might be going to some of the other storm-ravaged regions in the days ahead as well, Joe.
So, Monica, when we talk about the vice president, we have to keep in mind she jumped into the race with both feet less than 3 months ago. That reinvigorated her party in the process, but that also meant President Biden had to step aside. I know you've done some reporting about how he's handling that. What is it you've learned?
Yeah, and behind the scenes, these are conversations where we have learned that President Biden privately telling allies that he struggles and is grappling with the fact that he has all but left the national conversation when it comes to the politics of this race. That's something that was kind of evident in the VP debate the other night, where he wasn't mentioned very many times. And of course, he fully supports, fully backs and endorses his vice president, Kamala Harris, and certainly wants her to win in November, because that's tied to his legacy, and that's something that he talks about. But it is something where this is really a transition moment for him. And in his final months, we're seeing the VP try to chart her own course and also put sometimes a little bit of distance between herself, her policies, and what she is pitching she would do as president, and really, you know, try to separate that a little bit from what Joe Biden has done during his time in office. And we're told that's something that she feels is important that she has to do as well. You saw that in her own debate against Donald Trump, where she said, clearly, I am not Joe Biden. And we're told by several people that that was a comment that irked the president a little bit and got under his skin, because, of course, again, this is a moment that's marking the fact that he is leaving political life while she is really trying to make the case to stand alone on her own, while also touting the record of the Biden-Harris administration. Joe.
So, Monica, at this point, we likely have no more debates or any more big events like that. So help us understand what's just going to shape what happens in these last few weeks. Is it really just going to come down to visiting these battleground states, a lot of local news coverage, just basically the ground game?
I think so. I think you're going to be seeing basically Vice President Harris and Governor Walz just going to these battlegrounds over and over again. And it was interesting with Governor Walz in particular. He hadn't done much media. He hadn't really been doing a ton of interviews or taking questions from the press. And then yesterday after the debate, he did finally do that. And we are told he's going to have a bit more of an aggressive posture. He's going to do some late night shows. He's going to be doing more interviews. And I think the vice president is under pressure for that as well, because they had taken, when they took over the ticket, this approach of, we can't really be doing all of that because we just are getting this campaign under our feet. We have so much to do. We have so much travel. Now they're saying in this final sprint, they're going to be doing that. And that's also why you're going to see the vice president on 60 Minutes coming up on CBS in a couple of days, which will be key too. Joe.
Right. Monica, thank you so much. Let's talk more about the hurricane. In the wake of Helene, the death toll continues to rise across the southeast, with millions of people needing help. This morning, nearly 200 people are known to have died as a result of the storm that made landfall in Florida just about a week ago. More than half of those deaths were in North Carolina, where President Biden made several stops yesterday to survey the damage himself for the first time, as we just mentioned. It's just the beginning of a slow recovery process, with hundreds still missing and millions still without power. The president making a promise while on the ground in North Carolina.
In a moment like this, we put politics aside. At least we should put it all aside, and we have here. There are no Democrats or Republicans, only Americans. The nation has your back. The nation has your back. We're not leaving till you're back on your feet.
NBC News correspondent Sam Brock joins us now with the very latest. Sam, let's talk more about President Biden's visit. Monica touched on it a moment ago, but what else did we hear from him while he was on the ground in North Carolina?
Sure. So it's important background to note the president came, Joe, and offered a very sobering assessment of what is going to be a multi-month, if not multi-year process of recovery, and the fact that there's going to be billions, probably tens of billions in economic damage for these communities. He said that the federal government is going to stick this out. We know there's already 3,500 federal personnel on the ground, 1,200 urban search and rescue teams, but they've also been responding to the idea that FEMA was not acting fast enough. We got some information from FEMA, Joe, about the fact that they had to pre-position in a general location where they could reach several different states should the needs arise. They were in Raleigh originally. It's why it took 48+ hours for them to get water and food disseminated on the ground in places like Swannanoa, where I am right now. We only had access here, Joe, in the last day and a half or so because the roads finally opened up. I want to point your attention to what's behind me. This is the main road in and out of Swannanoa. This is a giant gaping hole that basically takes up about a half a block. This thing goes probably 10 to 12 feet deep. The road just buckled from within. And behind me, you're seeing all these crews right now trying to restore power lines. I know you mentioned the fact that it's widespread. There's roughly 1 million customers at this hour with no power in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. The scale is unbelievable. Residents here are being told that they may have power. Most people will by Friday, at least in this part of western North Carolina. That's if they can get the infrastructure actually rebuilt again, though. That's not everybody, Joe. So running water, another major crisis on the ground. Officials would not even venture to give a projection as to how long it would take to get residents here running water back again. It could be weeks, it could be months. Some people worried it could be as long as 6 months. So the Biden administration needs to certainly work through all of these different multi-layered crises that are happening simultaneously. The president trying to give his voice to the fact that they will do that, and please be patient.
Sam, in addition to just the incredible images you're seeing there, I know you are hearing harrowing stories from people. Talk about some of the things you are hearing.
This is pretty incredible. So we met so many folks yesterday in a small little neighborhood, working class neighborhood about a half a mile from where I'm standing that were talking about punctured holes in the roof where people had to break through their attic and get onto the roof itself to be rescued either by kayak or by chopper. And we saw the proof of that, not just in terms of the holes, but also flotation devices that some folks had used from getting from one house to another to put themselves in a position to be rescued. That was harrowing. Talked to another gentleman, his name is Charles Muse, who was going through his house. Everything is caked in mud. We're talking about feet of mud. He was just trying to salvage things that were either very important in terms of having a social security card or a birth certificate or family items that meant a lot to him personally. Here's a portion of our conversation yesterday and why these mementos are so important. Take a listen.
We have no running water. We're living off of water bottles and generators, and it looks like the city of Asheville is saying the water is going to be maybe weeks, maybe months before they have the situation back up and running. Everybody's helping now, but the real battle starts in about 6 weeks when the paperwork's done and we start to rebuild. That's when we're going to need the most help here.
It's such a good point, Joe. We're in a part of the country where there's a lot of second properties for folks. You know, in the Blue Ridge Mountains, there's not a lot of available inventory in the Asheville area. And now you're talking about all these working class people that have been totally displaced without the housing inventory to support it. Where are they going to live in the short to medium term as they're rebuilding their homes? Just one of the many issues right now facing local officials. Joe?
Such an important point because so many are going to have to now make a long commute to get in and out of the area day after day after day. I mean, Sam, we're just about a week into this disaster. As that man, Charles, mentioned, this is going to be months, years of recovery. But just right now, beyond the housing, what are the greatest needs?
Let me run you through a few of the others. Cellular connectivity. So right now, we don't even know, Joe, whether is it dozens, is it hundreds of people that are still unaccounted for? We've heard figures like 11,000 welfare checks down to 150, down to a handful. The latest we got from Buncombe County was they had it down to 4 from 400. But no one seems to have that much of an idea, largely because people are telling us we can't reach our relatives. We go to try to call them or use government channels and no one can get online. I would say that's probably at the top of the list. Water we talked talked about electricity, really just being able to get supplies through all of these things in their totality have created a nightmare logistically.
All right. Sam Brock, Sam, appreciate your reporting. Thank you so much. For more on Helene's damage, I'm joined now by Quentin Miller. He is the sheriff in Buncombe County, North Carolina, which includes Asheville. Sheriff, thank you for your time. I know you have a lot on your plate right now. Just lay it out for us. Sam painted quite a picture there, but where do things stand in your county right now from your perspective?
Well, first, I'd just like to say good morning. I will lay it out in just simple terms. We're devastated. You've heard the report earlier. You can see the photos. Those are my people, and it's heartfelt. And to add to that, I have deputies here who are responding to our community who have families of their own, and they placed them on standby to come and serve our community. So the devastating event is ongoing. We are in we think about the cellular or water. I'm asking for prayers.
And no doubt so many people are praying for your community right now, Sheriff. One state official yesterday said this will likely go down as the worst disaster in North Carolina history. So few people, for starters, have flood insurance in that area, and they may have lost everything. What is it you're just telling people who don't even really know where to start right now?
Well, first thing I'm telling them is that we're here for them. I'm telling them that we have to work through this as a community. We like to talk about one Buncombe, or the community of we. So I'm telling them that we're going to be with them throughout this whole ordeal. I'm telling them that their sheriff's office will stand with them. We'll be, because we're a part of them, and that we're in this together until we get recovered, and we will recover. We will do this, and we will do this together.
FEMA has said more than $10 million has been provided to affected areas so far. More will eventually come, but obviously that is just a drop in the bucket compared with what it's actually going to cost. Are you getting what you need from the state level, from the federal level right now?
Well, I don't want to do the blame game now. At this point, my priorities is getting my community safe and keeping them safe. I would say thank you to our North Carolina Sheriff Association, who's been providing us the necessary items and folks that we need. And also I would be thankful to other law enforcement agencies who have come across state lines, if you will, to assist us. So again, I don't want to do the blame game here. My priority is saving my people.
When it comes to water, when it comes to power, do you have an idea of how long it's going to be before those things are restored to your county?
I don't, but we just have confidence that we continue to work together. We have the belief that we believe in one Buncombe, that we believe that we're going to come through this. And again, with the thoughts and prayers of our community, thoughts and prayers nationally, that we will, again, come through.
All right. Sheriff Quentin Miller, we appreciate your time. This is one of the most stunning parts of the country, a place so many people enjoy visiting. We are all thinking of you, and we'll do whatever we can to help out.
Remember to pray for us.
All right. Thank you, Sheriff. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, let's bring in NBC News meteorologist Angie Lassman. She's tracking more heat alerts across the West this morning. Angie, good morning.
Hi there, Joe. Good morning to you. Boy, it is warm across the country, but we've specifically got heat alerts up for parts of the Southwest. Noticed more than 29 million people included in this. San Fran stretching down to L.A., out towards Phoenix. And these temperatures are going to be once again quite impressive. Not feeling like fall across much of the country, but specifically in places like Phoenix, we are headed to the triple digits again today. 107 is what we're expecting for that high temperature. We've got 90s for Albuquerque and Lubbock, even Kansas City running more than 10, 15 degrees above normal in that location here as we get to the 90s later today. Across the Midwest, too, temperatures warmer than normal. This continues into tomorrow, too. Notice not much change, not much cool air settling in. Still the triple digits for the Southwest. Still the high 90s to mid 70s across much of the plains and stretching into the Great Lakes. We even will enter early next week with temperatures a little warmer than normal, but there is a bit of a break in sight. Notice Kansas City, we go from the upper 80s to those mid 70s by the time we head into our next work week. We've got Atlanta still holding on steady to those 80s. Washington, D.C. ends up into the mid to upper 70s for Saturday and Sunday. Big picture look otherwise, it honestly is very quiet. It looks kind of nice. We've got a couple of thunderstorms across the Sunshine State, but otherwise all is quiet this morning. Now, one area we're going to watch, it's in the Gulf of Mexico, a broad area of low pressure that potentially could develop here as we get into the weekend, although right now it looks like it's about a 30% chance, so not looking great for actual development, but that doesn't really change the impacts that we could see. Likely it's going to be the showers, the thunderstorms across parts of the Gulf Coast. Specifically today, it'll be Louisiana. We'll see the state of Florida see some of that action as well with the showers and thunderstorms across, mainly focusing across the west coast of Florida. By the time this is all said and done, I think through Sunday, maybe an inch, 2 inches, up to 3 inches in some spots. Of course, a lot of folks are still recovering from Helene and some of these locations in Florida, so we'll be watching for that additional rain across that region, but mostly quiet across the country otherwise, Joe.
We will take the quiet. All right, Angie, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.